Learn English through story about how everyday objects tell human stories. When Mara stepped into her grandmother's old house after many years, she expected to find dust, silence, and fading memories. Instead, she discovered that every object in the rooms seemed to speak in gentle whispers. The wooden table carried the marks of countless family meals. The small cracked mirror reflected decades of faces that had looked into it with hope, worry, or joy. Even the worn armchair by the window held the shape of someone who had once sat for hours dreaming quietly. Mara realized that ordinary objects were not silent. They were storytellers waiting to be heard. She picked up a faded ceramic cup from the shelf. As she turned it in her hands, she remembered seeing her grandmother use that exact cup every morning. It was nothing extraordinary, not expensive, not rare, yet it held meaning. It held the warmth of routine, the comfort of familiarity, and the memory of slow mornings when the world felt calm. Mara understood that the cup was more than an object. It was a piece of her grandmother's life. While walking around the house, Mara noticed a small wooden box under the bed. Inside were paper letters tied with a thin ribbon. The ink had faded, but the handwriting revealed emotion. These letters told stories of friendships, promises, and dreams from a past Mara had never known. She ran her fingers across the paper and felt the presence of lives that continued to exist through these fragile pages. Each object revealed another layer of the family history. The old clock, which no longer ticked, still carried the memory of evenings filled with laughter. The collection of mismatched spoons showed how nothing in the house was perfect, yet everything had served a purpose. The more Mara explored, the more she felt that everyday objects recorded human stories with quiet honesty. Mara left her grandmother's house that day with a new curiosity. She began to notice the objects in her own home more deeply. The simple pen on her desk reminded her of long nights studying for exams. The notebook with bent corners held the beginnings of abandoned ideas and unfinished dreams. Even the smallest items told stories about who she had been and who she was becoming. One evening, she invited a friend named Lena to visit. As they drank tea, Mara asked her what objects in her life carried stories. Lena paused, then looked at the bracelet on her wrist. It was a plain silver band, slightly scratched. She explained that she had bought it during a difficult time in her life, when she needed a reminder of strength. The bracelet was not valuable to anyone else, but to Lena it represented a personal victory. Mara listened and felt amazed at how something so simple could hold an entire chapter of someone's inner world. Over the next weeks, Mara began collecting small stories from the people around her. A coworker told her about a keychain she carried from her childhood home. A neighbor described how an old cooking pot had been passed down from generation to generation. Each story revealed something intimate, something true. Objects acted as storytellers even when people forgot to speak. Mara learned that everyday items evolve as people grow. A coat becomes meaningful because it kept someone warm during a difficult winter. A pair of shoes becomes special because they carried someone through a challenging journey. Objects tie moments together, creating invisible threads that connect past and present. She realized that objects reflect emotions. They reveal what people value, remember, or try to hold on to. Mara began to appreciate the silent language of these simple things. Mara eventually started a small project. She photographed ordinary objects and wrote short reflections about the stories behind them. When she shared these reflections online, strangers from around the world began sending her their own stories. Some wrote about a chipped mug that reminded them of a loved one. Others described a worn backpack that had traveled to many countries. Each story was simple yet deeply human. Through this project, Mara discovered that people often underestimate the emotional power of everyday items. They think meaning must come from something grand or extraordinary. Yet the truth is the opposite. The most powerful stories often hide in things people see without noticing. One day, Mara received a message from a woman who described finding an old music box after her father passed away. The music box no longer played, but it held memories of nights when her father would wind it gently before bedtime. The woman wrote that the object helped her heal. Mara read the message and felt humbled by how objects continue to carry the love people leave behind. Another story came from a man who kept a broken watch from his late brother. The watch never worked again, but he kept it because it represented time shared. Even in its silence, it reminded him to value the moments he had with the people he loved. As Mara collected more stories, she realized something profound. Everyday objects tell human stories because humans give them meaning. They absorb laughter, tears, fears, and hopes. They remain long after moments pass, holding pieces of life that memory alone cannot keep. In the end, Mara understood that objects are not simply things. They are witnesses. They are quiet keepers of human experience. Through them, people remember who they were, who they loved, and how they lived. Mara began to walk through life with new eyes, knowing that every object around her carried a story waiting to be told.